Hello, everybody. It's Black and White with Brian Rundle and Lana Quest. Lana, my friend, how are you?
I'm here.
I know we always chat before this, and we're kind of, I don't know, we both sounded like we were on
Death
cruise
row.
control at 20 miles an hour.
I'm just happy I'm on time.
Very slow lane. We're just like,
Yeah, it's just one of those days. I can't pull it together.
yeah. Yeah, well, it's I don't know. We're doing our best. We're doing our best to get through everything here every single day, and maybe it's just regular life, or maybe it is just the world in general that is exhausting the shit out of people's minds. But as at least I always say, fuck it. We're going. We got to go through. Nothing we can do, right, Lana?
At least we
Lana
got
knows.
each other. Huh?
Yep.
At least we got each other. I mean,
that's absolutely true. And
that's
your state's looking much better every single day that passes by.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it may not even matter what state you live in the way we're going.
It's true. I'm just concerned about like taxes having to be raised because of all the cuts, and he hates our state as well as California, but he wants to punish us. So that's gonna suck, right?
Yeah.
I guess you're gonna talk about Harvard.
Yeah, we're gonna bring that up. We're gonna bring up everything that's going on. If you see the title of the show, it is Trump's latest stunt, maybe the worst of them all. There's numerous stunts, and Lana and I could probably take the time if we really wanted to list them, the top 10 worst Donald Trump stunts. But I can't imagine this one at least not being in the top 5. What is happening right now is, I think, maybe even scarier at this point, this quickly, than we had even anticipated. But it is, it's not good. And when you are taking people off the street and you are sending them to prison, and you have a judge say, no, you can't do that, turn them around, bring them back, and they say, no, we're not doing that, and then we send it to the Supreme Court, and they say, I don't really give a fuck what the Supreme Court says, we're keeping it there. That is a big problem, and that is not what the United States is. That's not what America is. In fact, that is an America that the conservatives and the Republicans, ever since I've been growing up, would be having a heart attack over if any other president was trying to pull what this guy was pulling. But Lana, do you want to say anything, and we'll kind of get started on what's actually happening, and we'll get into that story and a few others.
Yeah, I mean, we might as well just get into whatever story.
Yeah, let's get into obviously what's happening. Most people do know what's happening, but the government accused a gentleman from El Salvador. His name is Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, or he's a Salvadorian national, legally living in Maryland, of being a member of MS-13, even though he has not been charged with any gang-related crimes. He was detained by immigration officials and mistakenly deported, despite a court order that he remain in the U.S. due to a likelihood of harm in El Salvador. Justice Department attorneys previously conceded that he was removed to El Salvador because of an administrative error. El Salvador President Bukele said he cannot return Abrego Garcia to the U.S., nor will he release him within El Salvador. So like I said, I mean, most people know the story here. This gentleman came to the United States when his family was being harassed by MS-13 and was being threatened of being unalived, and the women in his family being raped. His brother, who did live here legally, had him come over to the United States when he was 15, so he came here seeking asylum. He's been living in the United States since. He married a U.S. citizen, has had children here in this country. I know there was a couple times he was stopped by police. He went to court twice. There was testimony that he was part of MS-13. Part of the testimony was They suspected he was part of it because in New York they wore Chicago Bulls paraphernalia, and he never lived in the state of New York. And there were lies being told over the last few days, and we'll play those um, that the judges ruled he was part of MS-13. There has not been a judge rule that he's part of MS-13. He has never been convicted of any crime in El Salvador or here in this country.
But Trump has.
But Trump has, and that is something we'll definitely talk about, which is just, again, this is just mind-boggling stuff that in a normal reality, you just kind of like shake your head. And if you read a book 20 years ago that had all this in it, you'd be like, I don't know if I'm buying this book. This is a little bit out of control. And it's, unless you're like into real far out there sort of fantasy science fiction sort of stuff. But this is where we're living now. And they obviously picked him up. They even in court records said it was a mistake, and they still did not acknowledge the mistake. Left him there. Judges said bring him back. They said no. Supreme Court ruled 9-0. Even Alito and Gorsuch and Thomas and Kavanaugh all were like, yeah, this is illegal. Got to bring them back. And they are in the process of doing absolutely nothing about this, which is outrageous. This is one of the worst stories of my lifetime. I mean, this is insanity.
Right. And we highlight him, of course. Sorry.
My dog's going to be doing it too, because I have an Amazon package that, of course, is going to be delivered between 7 and 8 o'clock. So,
yeah, my daughter pulled up and they hear her. So, like, they're going to just flip out until she comes in. Like, but there are other people in the El Salvadorian prison. We're focused on him, but like there's the hairdresser.
Yep.
That shouldn't be there. Who is here legally? These people are here legally. He's gay and he's there, right? We don't talk about him that much because I get it. We have to focus on one thing to highlight all of it.
Right.
But like there are people there because wasn't there a study that they did or whatever, they looked at the data and they, out of all the people that they sent, only 20% I think had like small crimes, not even like big crimes, but small crimes, and the rest had no crime.
We played that on the show last week. 60 Minutes did that piece, and there was 75% of the people who were on that airplane had absolutely no criminal record whatsoever. There was 12%, I wanted to say, that had crimes. Most of them were misdemeanors, and there was a very small percentage of them that had serious violent crimes, which again, I don't think any American would be opposed to if somebody was coming to this country. They were here either seeking asylum or they were here illegally and they committed violent crimes. We're all for that. We're all like, yeah, go ahead and send them back. We don't want them here. And that's not what this is about. But of course, the language that this administration uses.
But you also have to prove that they committed a crime, and this is the problem here, right? Like,
no, you don't.
There lies the problem. There's no proving anything. The only thing Trump's like, because I said so, and I said so because of the color of their skin, where they came from, their tattoos, hats, and or hoodies. Like that's the proof. Other than that, there is no proof, because Trump and his dirty ass went to court to argue his case, because everyone gets due process. And maybe people don't understand what due process is. Due process is your day in court. Like that means that they can't just pick you up and say, hey, you shoplifted, you're going to jail. No, what are you talking about? I wasn't there. You get a day in court. Like, you can't just kidnap someone off the street, human traffic them to a whole nother country for money, because that's what the fuck this is. If
Yep.
y'all don't think that this is human trafficking and literally paying El Salvador $6 million, who is that guy? The president is a self-proclaimed dictator,
Right.
right? Paying him $6 million to hold criminals. Like, this is literally slave labor. And what scares me is the fact that, are we really going to get that man back? Because
No.
he can talk. He knows what's happening in the prison. Like, they are not going to want him back on American soil so he can give an interview, so he can talk. This is just, it's just disgusting and sad. And we're going to keep on with it, because I hope you have the hot mic too with him.
Yeah, so I've got him saying it in a different interview, because, and we'll discuss the hot mic interview, but there's just so many clips that we could do. But
Right.
First of all, you were talking about Donald Trump's not going to bring him back, and he's doing, the thing is nobody's going to stop him either. That's the thing. He knows that nobody's going to come in when you have a Supreme Court ruling that says no, and then you say, yeah, okay, well, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And so far, nobody's done anything about it. We've had a senator, and I forget his name, Vaughn something, who said, and he represents Maryland. He says that if you do not bring this gentleman back, then first of all, I'm requesting a meeting with President Bukele while he's here. And if he doesn't want to sit down and talk, then I am going to El Salvador, and I'm going to find out where this gentleman is and how we're going to bring him back. Now, couple problems. There is speculation that he may no longer be alive. And if that's the case, then again, this is literally, even if it's not the case, this is still a terrible story. But if this guy is no longer alive, this is just so cruel and so awful of humanity. I mean, this is like literally the kind of stuff that you read in history books a long time ago. And like, how could we ever be that way? Like, how could, it just, you look at that and you're like, man, the America that at least that we see now, we've moved forward, and it's not perfect, and there's a lot of terrible things, but man, it was severely cruel back then. And now we're kind of back to that. And it's like, how is this possible? And why are there people out there, fellow human beings and fellow Americans, that are on the side of this absurd nonsense? But if you also heard Tom Homan, who's the Homeland Security Director, he says, go ahead and bring him back. You bring him back, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to round him up, and I'm going to send his ass back out to El Salvador right again. So, I mean, this is in fucking sanity.
Like, he committed a crime. Like,
right.
We're talking about this person like he's not human. Like, he was just out here doing what Trump did, raping, stealing, grifting. Like, you would think that that's what this guy's doing. All he's doing is taking care of his autistic son and being a dad and a friggin' husband, and they're talking to him because they're othering him to make him seem like he's some fucking demon thug. He's like, I'll just send his ass back. For what did he do?
Right.
He just happens to be from El Salvador. He's here legally.
He's got tattoos.
Just like, shut the fuck up. We know what it is. We fucking know what it is. Trump saw those numbers. He knows that he is behind in his numbers. He's pissed off that Biden deported more people at this time than he has. Yeah. He's pissed that Obama has deported, and they deported people the right way, mind you.
Right.
And still deported more than Trump. So now they're like, we got to up these numbers. We can't let him beat us. This is a fucking game for him. So that's why they're going to just grab people off the fucking streets. And then they're going to stop doing that, because that's costing too much money, taking too much time, trying to figure out where everyone is in America. That's why they're sending out them fucking letters talking about self-deport yourselves. You just go, because we're going to find you anyway. Like, this is insane.
And Lana, it may even be, believe it or not, everything you said was so terrible, but it may even be more sinister than that. And there's something that I've been looking into and reading about the last few days that I'm going to bring up here a little bit later. But let's play a few clips. Caitlin Collins of CNN asked Donald Trump about the SCOTUS ruling. And of course, Donald Trump cannot answer the question without demeaning CNN and Caitlin Collins, which is just so boring and ridiculous, but his flying monkeys eat that up. But here is his response to Caitlin Collins' question to him about the SCOTUS ruling.
Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please go ahead.
President Trump.
Doesn't even answer the question. He just rolls over her with the same stupid CNN bullshit and ratings, dumb shit. And again, this is the language that they're going to use throughout the presidency. So their dumb flying monkeys can continue to listen to him saying, CNN and you guys want these illegal people, and then people are going to argue with people like you and I and say, why do you want illegal criminals here, even though our point is there's no evidence whatsoever that this guy did anything criminal, anything at all, ever in his life.
It's like sometimes you have hope and then it just gets tarnished again.
Yeah.
Or like I saw Chuck Grassley had a town hall. I'm surprised he did a town hall.
Yeah.
And one of the people in the audience was like, when are you bringing that guy back from El Salvador? Right? And Chuck Grassley's like, Congress cannot do that. The president has to do that. And then he's like, well, the court said that he's supposed to come back. And everybody there was like, yeah. Right? So you still have the faction of MAGA that know this ain't right. It's that you said the criminals. This is not
right.
Of course, the racists don't give a fuck because they want Stephen Miller. Again, I keep going back to what fucking Stephen Miller said.
Yep.
That America is for Americans.
Yep.
He was telling you what he was trying to do. The goals, just fucking get them all out. I don't know who they think is gonna, do that labor and do the cleaning of the offices and the construction sites and the transit systems and who's gonna work on them farms and
right.
I don't know who they think is gonna do that. He's fucking America up, and MAGA is just really too stupid to even think ahead at how fucked up we are right now.
Yeah. And again, they've built this coalition of MAGA that will celebrate this as a win for them. They're going to celebrate as a win for America because that's what they've been told. You brought up Stephen Miller. He did speak in that, but I didn't pull the clip because I literally could put my fist through the screen watching that fucking guy talk. So he did lie, of course, and say that the Supreme Court ruled in their favor 9-0. I mean, this is how blatant they are. They will literally look at a press room, a room full of people who are real journalists, and look at them and say, "We won 9-0."
Yeah,
and nobody pushes back.
And everyone's shaking their head. I'm looking at fucking Rubio going.
Yep. Rubio is an absolute.
Daddy, am I making you proud, Daddy?
Yep.
I'm nodding my head, and I have my hands in front of me and Vance. Look at us. We're doing good, Daddy, aren't we?
No, I've got my hand down my pants, and I'm fondling myself because I am so in love with you, Daddy. Yeah. These men are so fucking pathetic. I saw it was a tweet, I guess, by Ted Cruz the other day when they were at the UFC fight, and he was like, I got to see the Trump dance up front and person, or up person, whatever the fuck he said. I'm like, dude, you are literally the most pathetic human being on the planet. I don't know how your wife looks at you and says, you are a man at all. I have no idea how your wife stays with you.
It's
No
disgusting.
fucking clue. But here is President Bukhari when he was asked about the prisoner and saying, hey, all right, are you going to facilitate bringing him back? And of course, he had this ridiculous answer.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I'll smuggle a terrorist.
Is that considered a suit, Lana, by the way?
It is not a suit. And what the fuck is up with all this fucking gold? It's fucking tacky as hell.
He's trying to look at that. That is tacky as hell. He's trying to look like Putin.
Exactly.
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I'll smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people.
Yeah, see, this is the fucking president of the United States, and this is another president. You realize and see how comfortable he is with dictators. But when we have people that are our allies, him and JD Vance and fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend like to team up on him. But you can see that this guy clearly read his Fox News talking points on the plane on his way to this meeting. So he made sure he said all the right things. And I love that the two big bad tough guys all of a sudden aren't so tough anymore. They're like, oh, we can't do anything. What are we supposed to do? How can we get rid of they can both do it if they want to. We all know this. This is disgusting. These are terrible, awful human beings. And unfortunately, we have people that are in our lives, friends, family members, coworkers, neighbors, who look at this and say, yes, President Trump is taking care of business and do not care about the human aspect about this at all. And obviously don't care about the facts behind it.
Yeah.
This is disgusting, Lana. Absolutely disgusting. But you were asking earlier about the leak, and really wasn't even a leak because he came right out and said it when he was asked about it, talking about deporting American citizens at this point, that if you are a so-called violent offender, that what we would do is we would round you up the same way we rounded up this gentleman who they are portraying as a violent offender, and we will send you to these El Salvador camps. And in that leak that Lana was talking about, he was saying to the president of El Salvador that you may have to build 5 more prisons to fit in the amount of people that we're going to send over your way. But this is what Donald Trump's response was when he was asked about that question.
We're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, what do you think? There's special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones.
Well, Lana, I find it very ironic, first of all, that he released a lot of people who were beating police officers with flagpoles. And this guy who was talking about raping 86-year-old women was found liable for sexual assault.
It's just really sick. But it's not surprising because, let me tell you, Black folk already knew that this was going to come. Not the black MAGAs, but like, if you are taking, and this is what we would say to our white allies, like especially white women, when he starts to take rights away from one group, he's not going to stop because he is a racist and he is a bigot and he is a misogynist. Like he just can't do it all at once. He was never going to stop at just immigrants. Like never.
Nope.
Stephen Miller said America is for Americans, right? They don't even think Native Americans are Americans. They don't even think the indigenous are Americans, right? They want to ship them somewhere too.
Yeah.
America for Americans means white only.
Yeah.
That's what that means. But they're not saying black Americans, oh no, y'all are good. No. When he's like criminals, he's not talking about white criminals. He's talking about the criminals of color and criminals on who gets to decide that. He
Yeah.
does. He gets to decide that.
Well, that's clear. The answer is yes. They get to decide if they don't like you. And see, Lana, this is the other thing too, that what you're talking about is that there are white people who may suffer from this as well. But the problem is it's going to be more people who are against the regime than for it. If you are the white guy for it, you're in great position. There could come a time where you're a prominent white person and you are speaking out against the administration, and they are going to find a way to detain you and maybe not fly you to El Salvador. Although, would anybody be shocked if we ever got to a point where something as egregious like that? I will never be shocked with anything that happens under this administration ever again in my lifetime. There's nothing that can shock me.
We put him on the wrong flight.
Yep. And the judge said, bring them back. And we're like, we can't. I don't know how we're supposed to do that. How are we supposed to facilitate it? They won't release them. Well, then we're not supposed. It's all nonsense. And by the way, we talk about some white people being affected. Again, we've talked about this before on the show. They are trying to find every single way that they can to rid of any DEI programs. And statistically, the demographic that benefits the most from DEI programs happens to be white women more than any of the demographics. So they are being affected, and some of the white women know it. There are a lot of the white women who don't know it. And because of the propaganda media that is out there now, unfortunately, a lot of people aren't going to know a lot of things. And that's why we're in the position we're at now. And they are on their knees with their yes, daddy, may I have another? Doesn't matter. Even if they're affected, it seems like they are just going to say whatever Donald Trump says, I am for, and there's absolutely no way I'm backing down from this. No chance. And that is pathetic. I don't know how you could be a man, first of all, and look yourself in the mirror and just capitulate to every single thing another man tells you. That to me is bizarre behavior. Bizarre.
It's just weird. Yeah.
Especially if you're a parent.
Yeah. Like you said, how is your wife? Like, how does she find that sexy?
I don't know.
Can't say anything. Like none of them. It's like it was all rehearsed. Like, okay, I'm gonna go around the room. You all are gonna agree with me and say the same thing. Stick to the script and just like around the room.
I think the women that might be with those men, they don't think about they're told what's sexy, and the person in their house tells them.
Money. And they're just spending the money too. Like they're just as fucking bad, right? Like they're just as bad because they're there and they're spending the money. Vance's wife, I used to feel bad for her, and I'm like, she knows he's a pig. Yeah, she knows he's a pig.
Yep.
She stays.
You can look at her face and tell the mannerisms.
Right. She knows, but she stays.
Yep.
She's there, right? It's power. It's money. She doesn't need it. She's got an education, but she stays. She's whatever. So he could be a pig. She doesn't care. She's probably like, well, he's not a pig with me.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what it is. She's trained, and it's sad. But at some point, she will probably wake up because women are just overall smarter than men. And at some point, they kind of get it and they go, oh, you know what? Maybe this guy is a dipshit. But anyway, Lana, before we move on, in the chat there, You can see Baby Juggernaut said hello. Hi, Baby J. Good to see you as always. Baby Juggernaut's a regular here, and we love to see her as always. But on the same subject, of course, he has his blonde flunkies going out there and telling the world that wants to listen to them and believe them that don't listen to these liberals, because the liberals are the ones who are happy to have these criminals going around the streets and causing chaos and causing all this crime, and they are fighting for these criminals, and I just can't understand it. Here is the Attorney General, which my understanding, Lana, ever since I've been following politics, that the Attorney General works for the people of the country, and they are supposed to be sort of the watchdog of liberty and justice throughout this country, regardless of who it is, and that includes the President of the United States. But obviously what he did is he hired a lapdog who will do his bidding, and for some reason will show her face literally nightly on right-wing propaganda media. Last night she was on with, of course, the brilliant Jesse Waters, and I say that facetiously because he's a fucking moron, and he'll tell you he's a fucking moron. But Pam Bondi was on with Jesse Waters, and of course, who do you think that she attacks in this whole thing? The Democrats.
Listening to all these liberal reporters, they keep calling him a Maryland man. He's not a Maryland man. He's part of a foreign terrorist organization. He's a member of MS-13 who, as you laid out in your monologue, came to this country and committed just gang acts. He was...
Lana, I know you work, you're not a lawyer, but you work in law. Can you listen to her? Because you can sometimes just tell the mannerisms. You could tell by the way she's speaking. You could tell by the way she's taking breaths in the middle of this that she doesn't even believe this, but she knows she has to say it.
The script, and it's just disgusting because it's just like, you don't care about human life. Like, you, again, the other, and they're all racist. Like, that's how you know that you're a racist, because you, like, his human life, like, you can label him. Like, it's so crazy because his wife should be able to sue, because she's literally lying and saying he committed criminal acts when he has zero criminal. You can't even Google that man and go through court cases in Maryland and find him, because there are none. So it's like, but MAGA, like you call them flying monkeys, they will just listen to her because she's a blonde talking piece and be like, oh my God, she's amazing. She's so smart. Oh God. You must.
That's why and that is, don't get it twisted. Don't get it wrong. There is a reason.
Absolutely.
This is a strategy, putting these attractive looking blonde women on there talking with such force and talking that these people on the other side are trying to destroy, and you get into the brains, because even the most successful, smartest man on the planet could have his entire life destroyed by a beautiful woman if she really wanted to go in and attack that, because that is a weakness for a lot of men. But I rewound it a little bit because, first of all, I wanted to point out just the mannerisms and her taking the breath, that you could tell that she knows she's lying. But I want you to listen to her words on how blatantly that she is lying about this man. And this is the Attorney General of the United States. She's not even a contributor to Fox News. This is the top attorney.
Like, why are you on TV every night? Why the fuck is she on TV every night?
I don't, because that is the plan. The plan is to continue to get this message out that these are awful people, and we need to reel in as many of the flying monkeys as we possibly can, because the more flying monkeys that we have in this country, the easier it is for us to get away with this. But listen to her words. Go ahead, Lana.
They could not even find a menacing fucking picture of this man. This is how like criminal he is. They couldn't even find one because if he was a criminal, you could find him with gang, doing gang whatever the hand says, whatever, right? Like you'd find that. You can't find it. You don't see him in any picture with his boys, gang signs, whatever. Like, he's not. Look at this picture. He doesn't even look menacing. He doesn't even look like a gang member. And they probably themselves was like, do we have anything worse than this? Like, he just looks normal.
The other pictures are him holding his child.
Exactly.
And his child is smiling, kissing him, all this stuff. There is no criminal charges on this man, not one. There's nothing that he has ever done wrong. He was in court a couple times early on. Judges have stated that they were trying to send him back. And the judge says, okay, we can't rule that we have to send him back. He didn't do anything bad enough to send him back. But it is insanity. But again, I want you to listen to Pam Bondi's words. And she is literally lying. If you somehow are some MAGA person and you are watching this, I want you to write down what Pam Bondi is saying. And then I want you to do your own research and say, whatever it is she said, say, did so-and-so happen? Did so-and-so happen? Go to AI, go to Google, go to something, but just listen to her words.
Who, as you laid out in your monologue, came to this country and committed just gang acts. He was
not one time has he been found where he committed a gang act.
You can't even name the gang act.
What is a gang act, by the way?
What the fuck is a gang act? What is that?
The top attorney in the country should be able to list the amount of things that are considered a gang act. I want to know what a gang act is, and then I want to see on record where he committed this. But that's one thing.
Caught, and he was two judges, an immigration judge and an appellate judge, ruled that he was an MS-13 member.
That is not true either.
Then why is he out? Then why is he fucking walking around? Like, so why? The judge just said, okay, you're a member of the MS, whatever the fuck it is.
Yep.
See ya. Have a good day. Go commit some gang acts. Like, shut the fuck
That's what I said. If you're MAGA and you're watching this, Google and again, this is where I would be pissed off as a adult human being. Like, if I was lied to constantly and I was believing those lies, but somebody convinced me to finally look up to see whether or not they're telling me the truth, I personally, as a grown adult, as a fucking man, would be offended that they continue to lie to me. So I want anybody that's MAGA watching this, I want you to go and say, was Garcia found was there any gang activity that he was found guilty of? And did the two judges in any of the trials he was in consider him or call him or find him that he was part of MS-13? It's just not fucking true. And to be able to go on national television as the attorney general, again, forget about just if she was just a contributor, it would be egregious. But as the attorney general, this is just fucking disgusting.
As well as ISIS testimony. Yet his attorneys are saying he's not affiliated with a gang.
Because he's not.
They're wrong, and he has no right to be there. But for an extra step in paperwork, just like you said, he would go right back to El Salvador, which is his home country, where he belongs. And President Bukele does not want to give him back to the United States, nor do we want him back.
Right, so that's it.
You fucking dipshit.
Cinema. Like, and in all of this, they want you to forget when this first happened, they actually said, oh, you're right. We weren't supposed to send him. But now we've erased, we whitewashed that shit like it just never happened. We never said it. It never existed.
Yep.
Well, they literally said he wasn't supposed to go.
Yep. Well, we have another blonde idiot who was up at her podium today, and I saw a clip of her last week that before she goes out every time to this podium, she tells a little prayer to Jesus. And she's a Christian woman, and this Christian woman has no problem going right up to this podium literally every day and lying for a convicted felon and a guy who was found liable of SA and caused an insurrection in this country, which led to police officers unaliving themselves and being beaten. And then those criminals that committed that act subsequently were released from prison and out on our streets now.
Why are we saying unaliving? Is that a thing?
Because I become so used to saying that because of being on TikTok Live.
Oh, I'm like, why are we saying?
Because that's what you have to say. And so I wonder if it affects YouTube's. I wonder if it affects YouTube's algorithm if you say, because there's certain words you can't say. And if you say kill, murder, anything like that,
say someone died.
Yep. Can't say it on TikTok, and they will suspend your account.
Someone got unalived.
Yep.
Like, I don't. Is this? I don't understand.
Yeah. I think it's more of a TikTok thing.
But what does it prevent? Is it because China?
Yeah, it is, because China is the main facilitator behind TikTok, and there are certain words I guess you're not allowed to say in China. So if you're not allowed to say them in China and on a Chinese app, they're like
that.
Yep. So I think that's why I'm saying it, and I'm so used to saying it on TikTok that I think now I'm catching myself doing it on.
Are you getting too woke? Like, are you getting too woke?
No, I'm not. I got to remember.
I'm always losing.
I got to remember where I'm at. So, all right, here's this idiot on stage. Caroline Levitt is, of course, who we're talking about, up at her podium. And, of course, you know what she's going to do. She's going to do the same thing that they're always doing. They're going to blame the Democrats and the liberals.
Still going off the El Salvador questions.
By the way, just keep in mind, this is, again, it's a well-oiled machine. You heard Pam Bondi do it. You heard Donald Trump saying talking about Democrats and the CNN liberal media. They would love these criminals back on the streets. And now this moron's about to do it.
Yesterday in the Oval Office, administration officials made it very clear that El Salvador is responsible for Mr. Abrego Garcia, yet El Salvador's president said we're not going to do anything with him. So my question is, who is responsible for this man and where he's going to end up?
Well, no. First of all, President Bukele said that he is not going to smuggle a foreign terrorist back into the United States of America, as many in this room and the Democrat Party seemingly want him.
Fuck. I can't even keep up with the fucking labels. I can't even keep up. Now he's a terrorist. So
Lana, that's what they do. They move the goalpost daily, and they move the goalpost daily and see how far away they can get away with it. And next thing you know, there's going to be stories about this guy murdering 20 people that people just don't know about. Well, can we take it to court? No, we don't need to do that. He's already in prison. There's nothing we can do about it.
Him to do. Abrego Garcia was a foreign terrorist. He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking. He illegally came into our country.
Now he's a human trafficker.
When what they're doing, like you said, what they're doing is human trafficking.
They kidnapped him and fucking human trafficked him.
Right.
Fucking like enslavement. Think that shit ain't coming back. Stop playing. What the fuck they're trying to do right now.
So we just went yesterday from a guy who was innocent, who was sent to an El Salvadorian prison, that he was an MS-13 gang member. There's proof of it. Judges have said it. Now, today, he's a foreign terrorist and he's a human trafficker. Just unbelievable.
And so deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result. There is never going to be a world in which this is an individual who's going to live a peaceful life in Maryland, because he is a foreign terrorist and a MS-13 gang member. Not only have we confirmed that, President Bukele yesterday in the Oval Office confirmed that as well. So he went back to his home country, where he will face consequences for his gang affiliation and his engagement in human trafficking. I'm not sure what is so difficult about this for everyone in the media to understand, and it's appalling, truly appalling, that there has been so much time covering this alleged human trafficker.
Oh wait, now it's alleged. Now it's alleged. He's an alleged human trafficker.
Yeah, this fuck nut. Yeah, she's appalled, Lana, by the way. She is appalled by
I,
anybody even thinking about coming out and saying anything about this guy who has absolutely no criminal charges
I
whatsoever.
swear to God, I hope his wife, if it's the last thing she fucking does on this fucking earth, is she gets retribution.
Yeah.
When Trump is gone and he's out of fucking office, I know they're planning for a third term, but they fucking do that, my ass is gonna be down in DC protesting, because we're
Right.
not gonna allow that shit to happen. We're
Right.
not doing that. I hope when he's gone and a Democrat is in there, that she fucking sues every one of these motherfuckers that have called him human trafficker and Trump, Miller, Bondi, that bitch, all of them, because like they're literally smearing him like he has no fucking right. It is just, it's mind boggling. This is racism. This is racism in 2025, right?
Yep.
This is like without the slave plantations. Like this is, but it's the same. It's the same dehumanization. You are not human. You are property. You get kidnapped off the street. We take the property, we sell it to El Salvador, because that's what we're doing, because we're literally paying El Salvador just to hold people. Like the El Salvador, that prison is like the new plantation. Like
Right.
literally we're enslaving people there for slave labor.
Yep. That is exactly right. And again, there's a possibility that these guys that are being sent over there may be told that, hey, these are the American prisoners coming in to these El Salvadorian prisons. They may not be making it out alive, or they are having a more miserable time than the other prisoners would be, that are already in there. So again, this is literally one of the worst stories that I have ever heard since I've been alive in this country. And don't get me wrong, there have been plenty, but I'm talking about as far of a administrative story when it comes to so-called politics, when it comes to the president of the United States and then his administration. This is something that was beyond my imagination. And now it's something that I think that all of us better start imagining more than just thinking that it will never happen, because everything is on the table at this point. Literally everything is on the table. And I think it's time for America to prepare for it. And I've heard a few people say, I think it really is time. This time, we really need to take an impeachment seriously. And I've heard more people bring this up, and I'm still wondering how you pull this off. And there are people advocating that an impeachment, even if the Senate does not go through with it, that it's still beneficial, that it still somehow maybe brings more things out to light, because the impeachment will get a lot of news. But, it's going to take some brave Republicans, obviously, in order for that to happen. And I think we have already found out that, and I don't even want to call them necessarily not brave, because
they're afraid.
They are afraid. I mean, legitimately afraid, and they have a reason to be afraid. And I'm sure they have more of a reason to be afraid than we even may know. And there's something I'm going to get to in a little bit about that, where we're going to talk about that. But Baby Juggernaut, I just saw your comment. The bubble-headed bleach blonde comes in at 5, tells you about the plane crash with the gleam in her eye. I absolutely understand that reference. That is Dirty Laundry by the great Don Henley, that I knew you were talking about when I saw that, because I know that song. But yeah, I mean, that pretty much goes on with what we were just talking about. And you're right. I think he has an autism awareness tattoo. I think, and it doesn't even matter what the tattoo is. If there's no fucking, even if he has an MS-13 tattoo, if he's not ever been found guilty of being part of that gang,
anything.
Right.
So much for, freedom of speech, freedom of anything here. Fucking MAGA ran around, freedom of speech.
Could you imagine if Joe Biden legitimately did what they were all saying and just said, nope, I don't care if Donald Trump did not do what he said he didn't do. I'm just throwing him in prison.
Right. Seriously.
No due process. The guys who attacked the World Trade Center the first time got due process. The guys who attacked the World Trade Center the second time got due process. The Boston Marathon bombers got due process. So taking the institutions of this country and taking what this country was absolutely built on, because you want to justify putting bad people in prison. And the way to do that is through due process. But now due process is not a thing anymore, according to this new administration. And it's just because they said so, not because of anything else. Because the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, said, no, we got to go through due process. And I'm like, what are you going to do about it? And they're going to be like, I guess there's really nothing we can do about it. I've heard somebody suggest that they believe, and I don't know this to ever be true, but again, as I said, everything's on the table at this point, that they suggested that at some point that they believe in a deep state, but the deep state is on the side of America, and that if it gets to a point where it's too far, that the military absolutely will get involved. And again, can you ever see that? I would have said at some point in my life, I would have said never. But again, who the fuck even knows anymore?
The military would get involved
with arresting Donald Trump. And
who had that though? Like that, my thought is like, who would be in charge of that?
That is something, maybe an answer that I don't even want to try to get, Lana. And the reason why is because I want to be able to at least have that settle in my brain as being a possibility, so I can relax for 10 fucking seconds. But do I really think that that could happen? Because when they told me that, my first instinct was no fucking chance. There's no chance. And I still really do believe there's no chance of that. But as I said,
if I just say a third term, I think like there's a higher possibility that something like that could happen, because you're not on the ballot. So you can't stay because you're not on the ballot, because the elections are going to move forward. Like for him to stay a third term means that we can't have elections in any of the states. We just can't have any. Like, so then that would cause something.
Yeah. What about, and there's also this possibility that's been thrown out there. And again, I have to think that everything is possible at this point, and it's not a good one. It is that you're going to see people, he may make an announcement that we're not going to have elections in 2026. You're going to see people out on the streets protesting. Then you're going to see the Proud Boys and everybody get involved. There's going to be riots out on the street. He's going to call some sort of emergency and say that we're canceling.
You mean just say it to get people out in the street? Because just because he says it doesn't mean it's a true thing. He can't like that for every state, which is any state, no Congress people, because there's other people on the ballot too. And just imagine if they lost the House. So we're just not going to have elections. So we're going to leave it there's more.
I'm not diabolical enough to understand how that would be done, but there are people in that administration that are diabolical enough that would understand the steps on what needs to be done and how to do it in order to get to a point where they will say, we're not having 2026 elections. And part of what I heard was because they would declare some state of emergency and we can't have people out of their homes or on the streets to have an election. And again, the fact that we're even considering this as even a slight possibility, to me, tells me we're living in the most disgusting America I've ever lived in my entire life.
That's when I think that Republicans would actually, not his diehard Marjorie Taylor Greene and those stupid folks, but I think other Republicans and Republicans in their respective states would hold elections, because one, it would be an opportunity. Like, it's time to get him the fuck out. Like, they'll be done with him. Like, they don't want him now, but they have to fucking deal with this shit right now. Again, except for his toadies or whatever the fuck they're called. But those other ones, they don't. They're afraid of him. I can't.
Well, what we're seeing now is really a diabolical plan. And again, this is something I'm
Others
going
want
to
to
get
be
in.
president. Other Republicans want to be president. They're not trying to keep waiting for this motherfucker to die.
Oh,
or
they
like
will though. No. They will, because they're in line. They are in step with
DeSantis
everything
wants
that this
to be
party is
president.
doing. They will not, if JD Vance, because the only ones who want to be president, like there are JD Vance and all these people, they will bow down to this man until they are told you can now move forward. They even asked him, do you think JD Vance would be the guy that would succeed you? He's like, nah, I don't know about that.
I'm not even talking about Vance. Fuck Vance. He's a toady. No one in that center with him would do it because he picked them for a reason. I'm talking about like DeSantis. The fuck you think he wants to wait another 4 years?
He's not strong enough to take on Trump, though. If that whole Trump people said, Ron, sit the fuck down, he would sit the fuck down.
Yeah.
I've already Ron DeSantis is a pussy.
I don't know. I just, like, I'm not saying he's not going to try. I just don't see how he can stop all of the states.
The reason why I think is because here's what they're doing now. What they're doing now is they are pushing the limits daily, and they're going to get to a point where they push them so far that everybody's hands are going to be tied until they say, this is how things are going to be done. You don't understand. This isn't an argument. We're not having a debate here. This is what's happening, and you can either fall in line or you're going to suffer the consequences one way or the other. We are in 3 months right now, and we've already seen an administration say fuck off to the Supreme Court of the United States. So the more they continue to do these things over and over and over again, by the time we get to 2026, they may be so far down the road that it may be impossible. You can get on a fucking rocket and there's no coming back from it. That's what I'm afraid of. And that's something, again, I'm going to get into here in a little bit. But I do want to bring up real quick, we're already forgetting about the absurd tariff war that we were just talking about last week, but it feels like 4 months ago with all the dumb shit that's going on. But Donald Trump is getting used in this tariff war by China. In fact, you already saw him capitulate to China, even though he's still trying to play tough guy, by saying, you know what? Some of those immigrants that are here that are working in the farming industry and they're working in hotel industries and stuff like that, we'll send them back. And then if the people that they are working for vouch for them, we'll bring them back so they can continue to work for them. They know how integral they are to these different industries to keep the economy going. So he is backing off there. And then China is absolutely playing this fool. I saw him with a tweet today, which he's already setting up for a second bailout for farmers, like he did the first time when China played him. And then China made a move today where they said, Boeing, you know those airplanes we get from you? We're good. We don't need your fucking airplanes anymore. And that is not going to be good for Donald Trump and the administration, because Boeing had lost a pretty decent amount on their stock price today ever since China said. China is 1,000 times smarter than not just Donald Trump, but these fucking idiots in his administration. Yeah. These guys think they're tough guys and badasses, and that they're going to push around other countries because maybe America at one point was used to being able to do that. China has been able to succeed on their own. And I by no means have ever been somebody that rooted for China. Right. Exactly. But China has been able, their GDP back in the late 70s was like $200, and they did nothing without they did everything without the United States. Yeah. But then they opened up their trading. They opened up, their relationships with people in the world. And that's why they're at where they're at right now.
We're going to go back to them. They're going to say, fuck America. We're making China stronger.
Yep, that's exactly what's happening. And now they're making relationship with Australia and England and the EU and
They're
all
like,
the
maybe
other
we
places.
shouldn't be the bad guys anymore. We don't have to be. Let America take it.
They are playing 4D chess. This fucking moron is playing 1D Candyland. I mean, this guy is still trying to figure out how to put the fucking shapes in the holes, in the blocks. China is not afraid of Donald Trump, and they are 1,000 times smarter than this administration. And this will not work out well for us. But he was interviewed on Fox News, and he was talking about tariffs again, and he was trying to explain why tariffs are such a good thing. And he referred back to an age where tariffs were the only money that the government got before.
That the money from tariffs could be so great that it would replace, in the old days, about 1870 to 1913.
He wanted to know the Gilded Age. First of all, this guy doesn't know about the Gilded Age. And you could tell he had to memorize those dates because somebody was telling him, hey, when you go on interviews, make sure you say these dates to these dates, because that's the Gilded Age. That's when we relied mostly on tariffs. But this idiot is going to keep going on about tariffs.
Tariffs were the only form of money.
Correct.
And that's when our nation was relatively the richest. We were the richest.
Yeah. First of all, that's not when this country was the richest. Second of all, that was back in a time where we didn't have expansionism. We didn't have, we weren't building roads and bridges and, all these things that we need to make our country more rich, the richest this country's ever been, as far as GDP and all the statistics that you want to look up. When our country was the richest, it happened to be Joe Biden's last year as president. But here he is still talking about tariffs, Lana. And I don't know, I'm sure you saw this. In fact, I'm pretty sure you saw it because I think you tweeted this out. But here he is on the day when he sent out the tweet that now is a great time to buy. And then hours later, he announced the 90-day pause on tariffs. We saw that the stock market raised 2,800 points at that particular time. And again, one of the most disturbing thing, it's not the most, but it's up there as one of the most disturbing things about this clip is Donald Trump standing around with multi-billionaires laughing about how much money they made in just a few hours. And what's disturbing about this is the flying monkeys who vote for these guys. They don't understand that laughter is at you people, because Donald Trump is in office and made this happen because of you. You are the ones that they are laughing at. They're not laughing that they made multi-billions of dollars. They're laughing because you are easily influenced idiots who will buy anything that is told to you. It is sad. It's pathetic. I hope one day that some of you wake up. I know all of you won't, but I know some of you. But let's roll this clip.
This is Charles Schwab. It's not just a company, it's actually an individual. And he made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million. Because, he's in financials. I've always been following.
Listen to the white laughter in that room, Lana.
I made you billions of dollars. Ha 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 ha.
Everybody's excited. Everybody's happy. And they're very proud of themselves. And again, symbolically, at least, that laughter is at you people who voted for him. Yeah. No question in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. We're rich. They're poor. Keep it coming.
Yep.
Wait for those tax cuts.
And again, in Pam Bondi, if she was really doing her job, would be investigating this right now.
Right. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay. So this part of the show, a little scary because I've been doing a little bit more research into some of the ideas of this administration. And part of the idea that I got into this research is I was on TikTok Live the other night, and somebody came up on the live and they were talking very intelligent sounding, and they were saying all these things, and it led into why the invasion and taking over of Greenland was a good idea. And you started to realize that a lot of the things that he was saying was just nutty, but he was saying it in a very intellectual tone. So I stopped and I said, first, can I ask you a question? Because I know this is not something that you have come up with on your own. This is something that you have studied from somebody else. Do you mind me asking where you're getting this information? And he started to bring up the Dark Enlightenment, which is a movement that has been spearheaded, or at least has been highlighted by some gentleman named Curtis Yarvin. And Curtis Yarvin is a guy who used to do these blogs, and he had studied sort of authoritarian governments and stuff like that. And he had made money doing something. I can't remember what it was, but it turned out that Peter Thiel was a big fan of his blogs and somehow continued to fund this gentleman. But I saw this article, and this article was written in December before Donald Trump actually took over. And there are things in this article and the ideas that Curtis Yarvin has for this country that already now have come to fruition. You asked me earlier if we're going to bring up Harvard. This is going to lead into this a little bit. But I highlighted some of the things in this article, and I want to read this out because I find this really, really scary stuff when I read this, because a lot of this stuff is already happening, and you could see where it's possibly leading to. But he was a serious intellectual influence on key figures in Donald Trump's coming administration, in particular over potential threats to U.S. democracy. Yarvin, who considered liberal democracy as a decadent enemy to be dismantled, is intellectually influenced on Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and close to several proposed Trump appointees. If you remember, J.D. Vance was funded by Peter Thiel. So a lot of these ideas come from Peter Thiel that are passed on from this guy, Curtis Yarvin. The aftermath of Trump's election victory has seen actions and rhetoric from Trump and his lieutenants that closely resemble Yarvin's public proposals for taking autocratic power in America. There's a gentleman, Michael Anton.
Oh,
Oh, doggy.
oh my God, get off me.
I was going to say, in this awful, awful time, when you could see a beautiful doggy like that, that is something that will make everybody smile. But she's very happy to see Lana, obviously. But anyway, there's this gentleman, Michael Anton, that he did a podcast with. And he now works in a senior role under the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. He said that no one online has shaped Vance's thinking more. The growing parallels between the incoming administration actions, especially Vance's views, and Yarvin's suggestion raised question about his influence. And now I'm going to get a little bit more into the meat of what they're doing. Yarvin's conversation, Yarvin's conversation was ostensibly about the book, The Stakes. The book was controversial even for the right for its prolonged consideration of autocratic Caesarism as a means of resolving American decadence. In this book, he defined Caesarism as a form of one-man rule halfway between a monarchy and tyranny. He adds that Caesarism is not tyranny, which is strictly understood as a regime that usurps a legitimate and functioning government. So basically what he's trying to say is that the government under liberal or democracy is not a functioning government, whereas Caesarism implements authoritarian one-man rule partially legitimized by necessity that is a breakdown of Republican constitutional rule, adding that a nation no longer capable of ruling itself must be ruled. And that's one of the reasons why they are saying things like we are in states of emergency, things like this. And the reason why we're going to be able to implement that is based on that. But Yarvin is the originator of the neo-reactionary or Dark Enlightenment movement. For years, Yarvin has consistently held to a number of explicitly anti-democratic beliefs. Republican self-government has already ended. Real power is exercised oligarchically in a small number of prestigious academic and media institutions he calls the cathedral, and a sclerotic democracy should be replaced by a strict hierarchy headed by a single person whose role is that of a monarch or CEO, and in this case, of course, Donald Trump. He also thinks that current liberal democracy contains the seeds of its own destruction. This is J.D. Vance saying that the task of conservatives right now is to preserve as much, and this was in an interview prior to them being elected. The task of conservatives right now is to preserve as much as as much as can be preserved. And then when the inevitable collapse comes, you build back the country in a way that is actually better. And that's partially what it seems like they're doing. They want this utter collapse of the economy. They want the collapse of the government altogether. That's what Doge is, when they're getting rid of all these government programs. That's part of the collapse. In 2022, Vox called Yarvin the person who spent the most time gaming out how exactly the U.S. government could be toppled and replaced. And these are the suggestions. That they would be an American autocrat should campaign and win an electoral mandate for an authoritarian program. You notice they always continue to use the word mandate, which it wasn't, but they are convincing the American public that this was a mandate. They should purge the federal bureaucracy in a push Yarvin has anagrammatized as RAGE, which stands for Retire All Government Employees, which you see they are already trying to do. They should simply ignore any court rulings that seek to constrain them. They should bring Congress to heel, in part by mobilizing their populace base against recalcitrant lawmakers, and liberal or mainstream media organizations and universities should be summarily closed. Midway through the conversation, Anton says to Yarvin, you're essentially advocating for someone to, age-old move, gain power lawfully through an election and then exercise it lawfully, adding, what do you think the actual chances of that happening are? Keep in mind, this is all in December before they took office. Yarvin responded, it wouldn't be unlawful, adding, you simply declare a state of emergency in your inaugural address. Yarvin continued, you actually have to have a mandate to do this, which again, they continue to say they had a mandate. Where would that mandate come from? It would come from basically running on it, saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. Throughout the 2024 campaign, Trump promised to carry out a wide array of anti-democratic and authoritarian moves and effectively ran on these promises. Trump has suggested he might declare a state of emergency in response to America's immigration crisis, which he did. Trump also promised to pursue retribution on individually named antagonists like Representative Nancy Pelosi and Senator-elect Adam Schiff, which he has not done yet, but you notice that he continuously talks about these two, and spoke more about broadly about dispatching the U.S. military to deal with the enemy within. Later in the recording, Yarvin said, after a hypothetical authoritarian president was inaugurated in January, you cannot continue to have a Harvard or New York Times passed since perhaps the start of April. Later expanding on the idea with the idea that you're going to be a Caesar and take power and operate with someone else's department of reality and operation is just manifestly absurd. We were just talking about, you were asking earlier about, you see what they're doing with Harvard already. They're trying to defund Harvard. Now they're obviously haven't taken away the New York Times. They haven't taken away Harvard, but in their speeches and in their dialect and in their actions, they're doing everything they can to harm Harvard, to harm the media and the left-wing media like they have always done. But this is kind of things, and I'm almost done. They also said what they want to do is recreate, and this is one of the scariest things, and we kind of alluded on this before. They want to recreate the Sons of Liberty style quote-unquote protests. The Sons of Liberty is a name for underground cadres who pushed back on British rule in the lead up to American Revolution. One historian wrote that their methods amounted to mob terror. Although they were also talking about there was an app for supporters would download and take instructions. While there is no app that exists, Jody Ernst, who is a self-identified sexual assault survivor, expressed skepticism initially about Peter Hegseth, who has been accused of sexual misconduct. In a story on Ernst's back down earlier this month in the New York Times, her shift suggested to Mr. Trump's MAGA base was ready, willing, and able to bully Republicans into submitting to their desires. And the last few things here, essentially, you have to be willing to say, okay, we're going to have this regime. We have a period of temporary uncertainty, which has to be resolved in an extremely peaceful way. What that means basically is a state of emergency in the White House. It means the president is basically taking direct control over all law enforcement authorities, a state of emergency in basically every state. And in September on the campaign trail, Trump said that and you may remember this, one real rough, nasty, and violent day of unrestrained policing would end crime indefinitely. One rough hour, and I mean real rough. The word will get out, and it will end immediately. It will end immediately, Trump added. So these are a lot of the things that are sort of in play already based on this dark enlightenment that J.D. Vance is very in tune with based on his relationship with Peter Thiel and Peter Thiel's relationship with this gentleman, Curtis Yarvin.
Interesting.
And that is scary.
I mean, every day is scary.
And I think that's what I was talking about earlier, Lana, is when they have diabolical people with diabolical plans, and these are well thought out things. He didn't think about this overnight. These are things that they have thought about for decades. This is history of authoritarian regimes that they have studied and figured out what can we do to put in place to make it happen here in America. And so far, I've used the analogy before, they are looking at this right now the same way Osama bin Laden was looking at the day 9/11 happened. Like, he was even like, holy shit, this is beyond even my wildest dreams. Yeah. And so far, what's happening in this country seems to be even beyond their wildest dreams. And they are continuing to push and push and push. And nobody is stopping them. Nobody.
No. No.
So I'm not trying to give anybody no hope whatsoever, but I think it's important that people understand and realize what is happening in this country. And I hope more people wake up and understand what is happening in this country. And when they do, maybe at some point they say, we definitely have to do something different. But one of the different things, Lana, is we've talked about before. One thing that the Democrats need to do is get out there in front of the people who continue to tell these lies, like the Joe Rogans. And there is this gentleman named Douglas Murray, who by no means is a liberal or a Democrat. He is from England. He is a conservative, but he also does not subscribe to far right-wing batshit crazy stuff. And he happened to be on the Joe Rogan show last week, and this clip was going around a lot. And I was like, yes, this is the kind of shit that the Democrats need to do more of. He literally called Joe Rogan out to his face. He didn't do it in a in-your-face mean manner, but he did it in a way like, hey, can I ask you a question? We keep pushing out this false information, and I'm interested what your opinion is of this, but this is our last clip on it, and I wanted to play this clip because this is the kind of thing that I really hope that we start getting out more and doing.
Can I ask you something?
Yes, sir.
Since the war in Israel began, and since the war in Ukraine began, you've had quite a lot of people who are very against both in different ways.
Yes.
Do you think you've had enough people on who are supportive of either war?
I don't know that word enough, if that's a good word.
Let's say enough people who are on the side of Israel instead of wild critics.
Well, I've had a few. I mean, I believe Gadsad is on the side of Israel. For sure. Jordan is on the side of Israel.
Mike Baker, Coleman Hughes.
Yeah.
Coleman did it for like 20 minutes, so it wasn't why he was here.
No, I mean, none of them is why they're here. It's a good question.
Do you think you've tilted one way?
Me personally?
No, just with the guests.
The guests, yeah, probably more tilted towards the idea that perhaps the way they've done it is barbaric.
Mm-hmm. But why do you think that is? Just out of interest. I'm just interested in your selection of guests because you're like the world's number one podcast.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think about it that way. I just think I'd like to talk to this person.
But can I just? Sorry, it's your show. But
Sure.
If you're going to interview historians of the conflict or historians in general, why would you get somebody like Ian Carroll or?
Yeah, but Ian Carroll, I didn't bring him on for that purpose. I brought him on because I want to find out, like, how does one get involved in the whole conspiracy theory business? Because his whole thing is just conspiracies.
Sure.
You know.
But do you have any? I mean, there's been a tilt in the conversation, both conversations, in the last couple of years, and it's largely to do with people who have appointed themselves experts who are not experts.
You mean like Ian? I don't think he appoints himself an expert in anything.
Who's that other dude who thinks he's an expert on Churchill?
Daryl Cooper does not think he's an expert.
In fact, I think it's everybody else is always calling him an expert, and he's like, I'm just a history.
Have you ever absorbed any of his material? Have you ever consumed any of his podcasts or anything like that?
I tried.
Yeah?
It's pretty hard to listen to somebody who says, I don't know what I'm talking about, but now I'm going to talk. Or I don't know about this. Or I'm not capable of debating this historian, but I'm going to just tell you what I think.
Yeah, but that's not exactly what Daryl was saying. I mean, Daryl's point of view, however you feel about this, what Daryl's saying is he doesn't really like doing debates. He likes to do long format stuff where he can really explain his position.
If you throw a lot of shit out there's some point at which I'm just raising questions is not a valid thing.
Yep.
You're not raising questions. You're not asking questions. You're telling people something.
Do you think Daryl's doing that?
I think there's a whole bunch of guys doing that. I think Dave is doing that, very obviously. Dave's a comedian, but he's now mainly talking about Israel.
I wish you would have thrown Joe Rogan's name in there because that's precisely what Joe Rogan does. He has these guys on.
Yeah, that guy.
And they always try to come off as that other guy's name is Dave Smith. I don't really know who he is. Apparently, he's a comedian, but he passes himself off apparently as he says, I'm not an expert. But see, that is the problem, is that you have people who are listening to Dave Smith more on the Israel-Palestine issue than people who are actually part of it. And people follow this guy, and he even goes further with this guy. And there's another clip. There's actually plenty of clips of them two going back and forth and him calling out these people. But he literally was telling Joe Rogan to his face, you know, this idea of, hey, I'm just asking questions is bullshit, and it is destroying the minds of people in this country. And that is an unregulated, really, and obviously unqualified person to be talking about it. And I say that not to be an asshole. Joe Rogan would tell you personally he's unqualified to talk about it, but he'll sit there and have these conversations with these people as if what they're talking about is expertise. People listen to it, people regurgitate it, and now it becomes fact in their minds.
Yeah. All for the money.
And that's the problem, where that's exactly what it is. That's one of the major problems we're having in this country. That needs to be stopped. But right now, as I've said before, we are on a bullet train that I don't know can be stopped. And dark times could be ahead. I really hope I'm wrong. I don't say it to be hyperbolic, and I'm certainly not somebody that is that tries to go out of my way to be a sky is falling kind of guy. But this is fucking serious shit. And anybody who's not taking it seriously, even the people, even you out there that are watching this and you voted for Donald Trump, I know there's no part of you that listens to me, listens to Lana, and says, you two have no idea. I believe what you're saying, and you're saying you have no idea what you're talking about. I listen to Joe Rogan daily, and he has these experts on, even though we just called out the fact that these are not experts. And they tell me the truth. Fox tells me the truth. Jesse Waters tells me the truth. Pam Bondi tells me the truth. Donald Trump, a lifelong liar and grifter, tells me the truth. And you crazy liberals are just trying to destroy the country. It's going to get you at some point. It's going to get you. And you're not going to see it coming. But I hope at some point you just kind of wake up and realize that it is coming. And if you don't start to realize that what they're telling you, that the liberals are dangerous and you can never vote for liberals, I'm just telling you, you're going to have to find a way to bite your tongue, take a deep breath, and vote against Donald Trump. You don't even have to say you're voting for Democrats. You need to vote against this regime because it's not going to work out well for this country.
Yeah, just vote for a policy. I feel like MAGA don't vote for policy. They vote for Donald Trump.
Yep.
He hasn't talked about groceries yet.
Nope. No, he did. He said, no, there's nothing I can do about it.
Right. So it's like that was the big drive for MAGA. They were like, yeah, it's the economy. Is it? And here they are, friggin' MAGA protecting Teslas. I saw them driving up like a whole bunch of trucks,
Clowns.
guarding Teslas, guarding an immigrant billionaire who's cutting jobs and your Social Security. You're protecting his billions of dollars, and you probably can't afford gas for your truck. Like, make it make sense, MAGA. It's just y'all dumb.
It is legit
It's
mind-boggling. But I will tell you, Lana, this is something that they have done for years and years and years, and it is actually now to a point where it has worked. And that strategy was to build the Democratic Party as a far left-wing party that is so crazy that they don't care about American people. They only care about open borders, which doesn't exist. They only care about boys playing in girls' sports. They only care about marginalized communities, and that's it. They don't care about the mom and pop store. They don't care about your taxes. They don't care about your money. They don't care about your Social Security. They don't care about your Medicaid and Medicare, even though they're the only ones trying to protect all this stuff. But there are too many people in this country that believe somebody like me, somebody like you, only cares about things that really aren't, not even really, they're just literally not happening. They're not happening on a scale. And even if they were, it's not the Democrats, it's not liberals, it's not their main source and main focus, but there's no getting it out of their heads at this point. They just believe it. And you can't, I can tell them, I've been doing this, I've been voting, and I've been a registered Democrat for years. This is not my main focus. And they still won't believe it because Jesse Waters and Tucker Carlson and the other fucking morons that they listen to every single day, even though they look at us and go, where do you get your news from? CNN and MSNBC, but they're getting their news all day from Fox and Breitbart and all the fucking crazy right-wing nuts.
Yeah.
So, and I don't get my news from CNN and MSNBC, by the way. But anyway, Lana, anything else?
No, I'm exhausted.
I am too. I can tell. All right, let's get the hell out of here. As I always say, thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, all that bullshit.
Yes.
Go check out Lana's show, The Quest Show. She's on Thursday night sometimes. Sometimes she's not. Fuck it. I'm not even going to ask her if she's on this week.
I've
You can
already
figure
got
it out
it set
yourself.
up. I've already got it set up.
Oh, she is on. All right. All right. She's going to be on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. So make sure you tune in to The Quest Show. She's already set up. I know in her mind she's got to commit to it.
Exactly. So, I already set it up.
Please check out her page. In fact, you can find her page in the description below. Please like, share, subscribe to our show, her show, all that stupid shit. Lana, you're the best. And I will see you again next Tuesday.
Yes. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Thanks.
Celtics
playoffs start next week.
What day?
The 20th. So in 5 days, actually.
Oh.
What are we? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh.
Let's go, Celtics.
Nice.
Okay. Right. We'll see ya. Good night.
Be safe out there.
You too. Bye.
Bye.